Hello and welcome to an all-new episode of Anime Brain Freeze. We are your elite hosts.
I am John.
And I'm CC, and when there's just too much cool anime to watch, we've got you covered. Today we have a colorful hodgepodge of anime adaptions for you, any one of them technically stemming from a different type of source material. I'll kick off the show with my review of the new adaptation of the 80s/90s manga Spriggan, where we follow a James Bond Jr. on his mission to protect the world from ancient artifacts with immense power. After that, John will enroll in the cutthroat school of the light novel adaptation Classroom of the Elite to witness the students of Class D outmaneuver their competition with all tools at their disposal. And last but not least, I will count up my sins and take a trip to a windy, hard-boiled, bizarre town that is the stage for the Kamen Rider spin-off Fuuto PI to check out what hard-boiled cases the gang from the Narumi detective agency has been investigating in recent times. So get ready to jump into the passenger seat of this review thrill ride, and don't pause the pod, we'll be right back. Long before the era of prehistoric man, an advanced alien species inhabited Earth. Negligent of the power they held, these beings ultimately caused their own demise. However, the aliens left behind a warning to future civilizations on indestructible tablets. The people of the future cannot find a good use for these dangerous creations. They must destroy any remains of the ruinous ancient technology. Various paramilitaries, national armies, and armed private forces began to secretly search for these mysterious artifacts in order to be used for their own good and against their enemies. In modern times, the Arkham Corporation and their private special forces unit, the Spriggans, seek to seal the relics away and prevent renegade actors from exploiting their powers. The young Spriggan U Ominai is one of Arkham's best agents, with the futuristic gear developed from the ancient technology at his disposal, called unearths. He is ready to face any danger his hunt for the artifacts throws at him, be it espers, killer robots, ghosts, or feisty renegade tomb raiders. But is Yu's trust in his employer justified, or are there some dark machinations going on at Arkham that Yu eventually has to face head-on in order to fulfill his ultimate mission of protecting the future? So, Spriggan is based on a manga written by Hiroshi Takashige and illustrated by Ryoji Minagawa, which started in 1989 and ran for 11 volumes, and an extra issue until 1996, I think. I own some of these, but not all of the manga volumes, because at some point while reading it, I thought to myself, I think I want to experience most of that story in animated form first, because I'm an anime guy first before I'm a manga guy. So, surely it won't take them that long to tackle a full adaptation of this one. Well, guess what? It took them around 30 fucking years.
I was about to say, ha 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 ha.
But yeah, a bit of its story was already adapted into an anime movie in 1989, which I watched before I checked out the manga, and which was written by none other than Katsuhiro Otomo, the guy behind a little manga and anime movie called Akira. That Spriggan movie was animated by Studio 4C, still holds up immensely well, in my opinion, especially in terms of looks, and I love it to bits. I recently rewatched it. It was one of the first anime that really grabbed me, and I can highly recommend it. Apparently, there was also a PlayStation 1 game called Spriggan Lunaverse in 1999, which I wasn't aware of, published by From Software, weirdly enough. But I haven't checked that one out, so don't know if it's any good. Maybe I'll play it sometime, now that I know that it exists. But yeah, we are here to mainly talk about this new anime adaptation in form of a Netflix series. This show so far counts 6 episodes, which seems like not a lot, but surprisingly, they are double length. So you get around 45 to 50 minutes for one episode, which is very rare for anime TV series. I think there were some that tried to go for that format, which is more, common in American TV, or the standard there, I guess, except for sitcoms and stuff like that. But it apparently never stuck. At least I can think of offhand of at least one show. I think there was one something Monogatari sort story or whatever that did that. But aside from that, I can't really think of any series that try to go for the 45 minutes, 1 hour episode length. John, can you?
Nothing springs to mind, no.
Right? So I guess either it never worked or it never lent itself well to doing, adaptions of manga chapters and stuff like that. Or, in terms of how a TV schedule in Japan, what that looks like. I don't know. So, yeah. So it was surprising seeing that in anime adaptation. And maybe that happened because this is a Netflix exclusive thing. So maybe they were going for, hey, let's try something else with this one. So that's neat. That's interesting. Here it fits kind of rather well because any given manga mini arc kind of provides enough material for the runtime of exactly one episode. So we get a new closed-off story with each new episode, which is pretty neat. I haven't cross-checked the source material with the adaptation, so they might have cut or extended some bits to make it work flawlessly in that kind of time frame. But if that's the case, I didn't notice, which isn't really a surprise because Hiroshi Seiko is responsible for script and series composition, and he's one, if not the best adaptive screenwriter in anime space, in my opinion. If you need a refresher, he's adapted little shows like Attack on Titan, Mob Psycho 100, Vinland Saga, Jujutsu Kaisen, and is currently doing a stellar job on Chainsaw Man. So, in regards to bringing the manga's plot and character stories to the screen, the series couldn't have been in better hands. Now, let's talk about the presentation. David Production handles the animation, and the show looks great in some parts, okay in others, and really bad in some other scenes.
Oh no.
Mostly, and that might be a completely personal bias, because it heavily employs CG for certain parts. And again, we have talked about this so many times, so I don't want to make a big deal out of this. I think listeners that have stuck with us for a long time are already sick of me complaining and whining about CG animation all the time. And I don't all the time because we've reviewed Orange shows. I want to remind you, and I only had high praise for those. The animation too. So I'm not harping on CG all the time, but in specific cases, it really pushes my buttons. Spriggan, sadly, is one of those cases. I guess it's more egregious because I was looking forward to this adaptation for a long time, and it's not exactly what I wanted, and that, you know how that is. I mean, that's probably how the people who were reading the Game of Thrones books from the the first book and then got Game of Thrones season 7. So that's how they felt. And it's not that bad, I guess, Spring. Like I said, the story is still intact. The story is still great, but there are some problems with its presentation. So let me front load this review with that stuff that irked me about the look of the show, so we can get to a more positive side and also end on a more positive note. So what they did with the CG in here is the thing I like the least with anime CG. They used it on the character models and only on some of them. So you have you and some of his opponents or faceless soldiers that are CG in some of the action scenes, and then sometimes they are not, and some characters are not, and it doesn't work at all. Like, it sticks out as much as you would expect. It's especially jarring that Yu's model is CG during most of the fights, because some of his one-on-one big signature opponents are traditionally animated. So you have your standard choppy, stiff, floaty, weightless enemy CG battling against very well traditionally animated bad guys. And I'm like, who am I to root for here? Isn't the hero supposed to be the good-looking one? What is going on? And, that happens throughout the entire series. I mean, there's some parts where Yu is still traditionally animated. There's a scene in the first episode in a garage where he's just beating up 2 bad guys, I think 2. And it looks really good. And, in general, it feels like David Production just poured a lot of effort into this. Like, there's some scenes, some episodes that look really good, but then every time Yu dons, at least when he dons his special suit, his muscle suit, a muscle fiber suit, then he usually becomes CG. And that extends to some of the dialogue scenes, which is, hey, as much as this is irksome in action scenes, there you still have the ability to hide certain shortcomings of the CG animation with sweeping camera movements and stuff like that, right? And making some clever editing and stuff like that. But when characters are just standing next to each other and talking, it looks even stiffer than in the action scenes. And it's like, and then they change the scene and suddenly they're both traditionally animated and the mouth movements are more fluid and the head movements are more fluid. And it just feels more in sync with everything else. And that pulls you out even more once they switch back to the CG part. So, I think my main problem with mixing CG and traditionally animated characters or using CG on humanoid characters in anime in general is that they always feel like foreign objects. They look different, they move differently, their shaders are different, they have a different spatial presence due to the model being 3D. Now, you can argue the same applies to CG vehicles or mechs or other machinery, but I think for humanoid models, it's more egregious. Machines move differently than human characters anyway, so the dissonance isn't as jarring there. But if you have two things in the same scene that are supposed to physically look and behave the same way, and then they don't, that's just irritating. And it always distracts me from actually enjoying the show to its fullest. It just doesn't feel right. And I know that's not the case for all people, it's just a very me thing. It always pulls me out. I'm not even saying that the CG for anime standards is necessarily bad. Some of it is, and we'll get to that in a moment. But, in some parts, the action looks really good. The fights look really good. So, yeah, it's not all that clear cut. It's not necessarily really all the way through bad CG show. But when it's bad, it's really bad, and it sticks out when it's mixed with traditionally animated stuff. Then it probably looks worse to my eyes than it would if it was just all CG, because I would get used to it. I don't know. It's also not what I want. So whatever. Yeah. It's really tough. Just don't do it is the answer here. Just don't fucking do it. That's the easiest answer. The simplest answer. Just don't fucking do it.
It's sounding like the issue I had with the Magnificent Kotobuki, where they wanted to do both and they did neither particularly great.
Exactly. I mean, they did, like I said, the traditional animation is good. But because it's so good, and maybe it's so good because they could save some money through employing the CG models and stuff like that. But the traditionally animated stuff looks so good that the CG just sticks out so fucking much right next to it. It's like this, you have a human here, and here you have a fucking sock puppet. It's like, all right, one of these doesn't belong. This is not a Muppet movie.
One of these things is not like the other.
Exactly. So, not a fan. The Berserker in episode 4 is the absolute low point for the CG in this show. Like, it's this ancient killing machine that gets semi-accidentally awakened by the British military, and it's able to kill full battalions of soldiers in an instant. Its design is this mix of beetle and robot, and it's supposed to look threatening, otherworldly, and horrifying. But here it just comes across as goofy. Like, it stiffly low-frame stutters across the screen with what is supposed to be like an imposing stride or something. It's way too brightly lit all the time. Its armor looks like 90s-ass bump mapping textures. It's bad. Honestly,
oh no.
I would have preferred it just being well-drawn, dark, shadowy, scary still frames over this. I mean, you still get to do a lot of badass shit when fighting it, but oh boy, is he the only one looking somewhat cool here. Which is something, I guess, because he's the main character, but it's supposed to be like this super intense square-off between him and this fucking rogue AI thing, and it's just goofy as fuck. And I'm just sitting here, head in my hands, and like, oh no, guys, what have you done? Why you do this? This is so bad. And, to be fair, it's only one episode that is that bad, but, consistently that bad from beginning to end. All the others have bad parts in them, or some do, not all of them, but, that's the one that's just stuck out, where it's like, oh god, that was not a good choice, guys. But like I said, at least the camera work in most of the CJ battle scenes, not the one against the Berserker, but in the other episodes, is really good. Like, the action direction in general is top-notch. Like, some of the fight choreography is downright insane. It's a fast-paced action fest for sure. The director is Hiroshi Kobayashi, who is currently doing the new Gundam show. So, yeah, he's definitely, I don't know. He also did Kisniver, but I attribute the flaws of that show to the writing and not necessarily the direction. Maybe both. I don't know. But, the Gundam show is great. And like I said, the direction itself, unless he was the one that made the choice to use CG in this so much, is good. It's really good. Like, the action scenes are very well directed. And on the flip side of all the bad stuff that I talked about, we have episode 5, which is almost completely devoid of CG character models. And guess what? All the fights in that episode look fucking great. And much better than the stuff from the other episodes. So, what was the thought process here? Did they need to save money with the CG models in the other episodes to make at least one look 99% consistently good? Did they just not have time to create several CG models of Yu with different clothing? Because he is traditionally animated the entire episode. Only in the last couple of seconds of the final action scene, he gets rid of his green bomber jacket and we see his armored muscle suit, and then they use his CG model. So I guess they only use it or can use it when his suit is visible? Why? Because of the muscle fibers? Are those too hard to animate traditionally on a tight budget and schedule because they're so shiny, or so, they're so detailed? I don't know. Maybe it's because of the blue glowing particles the suit emits sometimes. I don't know. I don't get it. I would really like to know why they thought this would be the best route to handle things, because I don't understand it. I should maybe find some interviews why they decided on this mix. There is probably some reason for it. I'm not saying it's a good reason, but I still am not convinced that this was the best choice. Even if the traditional animation would have been a bit worse if they didn't do Yu in CG and a lot of other stuff, I would have taken that over what we got for most of this. But hey, that's just me. After all that negativity, let's talk about the good parts of Spriggan, because there are a lot of good parts here. That's why, there's a reason why I was looking forward to this adaptation so much before I actually saw it. The world of Spriggan is really cool. Like, think of 80s, 90s spy movie, maybe special agent stuff. Spriggan is very Metal Gear Solid. On steroids, though. Or James Bond. Or, Indiana Jones. Like, the villains, the toys you get to play with, the historical fiction stuff. He even has his own Q professor guy who gives him like new gadgets that are, derived from the ancient technology. It's super neat. Like, if you're into that kind of genre stuff, if you like I said, James Bond, if you like Metal Gear Solid, if you like Indiana Jones, and all the mix of science fiction and fantasy and tech gadgetry and spy and special agent stuff, I'm pretty sure you'll like Spriggan, at least when it comes to design and tone and story to an extent. Apparently, Spriggan was actually a huge influence on Metal Gear in the sense that the artist behind the Spriggan manga, Ryoji Minagawa, was hired to do official Metal Gear Solid art.
I guess that was before Yoji Shinkawa hopped on board.
No, maybe it was just like Yoji Shinkawa did all the stuff first, and then they released an art book or something, and then Minagawa was asked to do some artwork for Metal Gear Solid because, as an homage thing, because Spriggan was an influence on, apparently. Okay. I didn't confirm any of that. I've read it on Twitter and another site, so maybe take that with a grain of salt. But it makes sense, because there are definitely some tonal and, in terms of design, some commonalities here. On that note, the second episode has you and another Spriggan, Jean, fighting two goons from the US Army that are literally named Little Boy and Fat Man. That's the same kind of subtlety Hideo Kojima employs in the writing of his games. So that's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. It's right there. It's on Front Street.
All the subtlety of a jackhammer.
Yeah. And the mix of, like I said, of science and supernatural shit is also very Metal Gear, with Vulcan Raven and stuff like that, and Psycho Mantis. And, Indiana Jones is in there as well. Hell, in episode 3, where you goes on the hunt for an elixir that grants eternal life in a haunted forest is pretty much a mashup of parts from Raiders of Lost Ark and Last Crusade. So it's all in there. Like, this show wears its influences on its sleeves, and
70% of my body is made of movies.
Yeah, exactly. So there it is. But it's fun. It's super fun. It's kind of lightweight, I guess, in terms of plot, at least so far, because each mission is kind of standalone, and we don't really get that much character development out of any of the characters. A bit here and there, but it's more like, hey, here's a fun mission and a fun artifact that you has to hunt for, and some side characters are introduced. We get to meet the Spriggan called Jean, who can transform into a giant were-tiger for some reason, but is also a sniper. We have Yoshino, who's a fun lady, a fun Tomb Raider lady with a very forward attitude. Who's like, she is really good at telling people to shut the fuck up. And, you know, she seems really grounded, but she's also always has her eyes on the prize. So she's a bit backstabby. But yeah, she's a lot of fun. I liked her a lot, and I hope she appears more in the series later on. So that's cool. And then we later also meet Hugh's master and stuff like that. So yeah, there's some cool side characters here, and they all have a different power sets and stuff like that. So it's really interesting and fun and diverse from episode to episode. Then you, of course, always travels to different vistas, to different countries. So scene hopping, where it's a bit that feels a bit like Mission Impossible or James Bond. So that's cool. So you get different environments that are all interesting. And, you know, then you get all the mysticism stuff, all the slightly supernatural stuff. And it's really cool. It's just a very, very entertaining, diverse show when it comes to what it is offering in each episode. You know, the base setup is always the same. There's an artifact, you hunts for it, and that's kind of the plot. And then some weird shit happens, and you has to get to the bottom of that. And that's it. That's kind of Spriggan for now. I mean, there is more stuff coming down the road, I guess. And I don't want to really talk about that now, because that would be spoilers, I guess. But there's some story developments later on that that are pretty neat. So yeah, that's fun. Also, another thing, I forgot about the show or the manga, or maybe they went a bit more overboard with that in the series. Like, this is a very bloody show. Like, that is surprisingly violent, like really violent show. I was taken aback a bit by some scenes where it's just like people like being cut up into pieces, and just, I don't know, fucking beheaded, and just body parts flying everywhere, and fucking burned to death. It's a really violent show in parts. I was not prepared for it. It's like, holy shit, what the fuck?
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's like, I thought it was a fun Indiana Jones adventure we're going for here. I mean,
nope.
There are some gruesome scenes in Indiana Jones too. So, I mean, that's, I guess, par for the course. But still, it's really assaulting you with that in parts. It's nothing really super gross where I was really like, oh god, this is too much. It's just funny how over the top its violence gets sometimes. Like, there are a lot of red shirts in Arkham. Like, the second episode has a guy literally going, I'm going on my honeymoon once this mission is over.
Oh no, dude. you raised the flag.
You can't say that. You just can't say that, man. But yeah, that made me laugh. So, so yeah, the show's full of that. It's really entertaining. And if you're squeamish when it comes to violence and stuff like that, maybe you need to look away on certain scenes, but it's not too much in my opinion. It's just super over the top and kind of adds to the entertainment. It feels really nice and a bit of 80s movie trashy in certain parts. So that's cool. That's cool. I liked it. I liked it a lot. The OP also has a bit of James Bond Snake Eater feel to it. Meanwhile, the rap lyrics in the ED are kind of hilarious. I won't quote them here, but just listen to that ED. You're gonna have a good time.
Oh, it's one of those.
Yeah. I'm gonna send it to you later on because it's a hoot. It's a hoot. Yeah. Each episode has a different little mini arc. The second episode in this is the story they used for the movie mostly. They changed some stuff and meshed up some storylines from separate arcs of the manga for the movie, I think, if I remember correctly. But, most of that they take from the second episode. And it was interesting seeing a version of that is closer to the manga. Though I think I prefer what the movie did with it, just because it felt like a more complete story. And, of course, better animation. Though the animation in that episode in itself is not entirely bad. There's a kick-ass battle between Jean and little guy. So that's pretty cool. But yeah. So let's talk a bit about our main character. He's one of those anime 16-year-olds that looks like he's in his early 20s. So definitely a relic of the 80s, I guess. But yeah, he's cocky and likes to sling jokes at his opponents mid-fight like Spider-Man. But he's also pretty smart. For example, he uses the Doppler effect against an enemy that uses sonic waves as a weapon. I mean, the physics of that probably don't make a lick of sense when applied to the real world, but in this show, in this universe, it shows that there's more to him than his muscle suit. He's also a massive nerd for science and archaeology. Like, he's a cool, fun character with a good heart who cares for his friends and coworkers at Arkham, even if there are obviously all red shirts. So, but, he doesn't let himself get down. He gets really angry when his friends get slaughtered by the US Army in the second episode. But yeah, it's cool. And his armored muscle suit is like still the coolest shit. It was back then and it is now. It's like the suit made of this ancient material called Orichalcon that uses like this kind of force field and artificial muscles. And it hardens when pressure is applied to it as a reaction.
So you're saying nanomachines.
Yep, that's what I'm saying. Pretty much.
Kojima!
Yeah, but it's fun. And like I said, even if there's CG, the battles and when he goes full muscle suit, like full power, hyperspeed and everything, it looks really cool. Just the suit has just such a cool, simple, but effective design to it. And I liked it back then and just I like it now. It's just nice. It's a really cool gadget and has a nice look to it. I think it's great. And yeah, like I said, cool side characters. Jean is cool. He's definitely more bloodthirsty than you. But, him and you have kind of, again, this rivalship, but they're in the same organization and, they're buddies. They bicker a lot, but obviously they have saved each other's asses many times and they know they can rely on each other and everything. And yeah, so John is also a really cool character. We haven't seen that much of him in the show yet. I hope he appears again later. But yeah, he is definitely a cool guy. I liked him. I like Yoshino, I like Akatsuki, I like Yu's master. Yu is fun because he interacts with a lot of fun characters. I don't know if right now there is too much to him in terms of just character and character development. Like, it's kind of weird that the show always tries to bring in Yu's school life. I mean, I guess it's supposed to ground him in reality considering his missions are so bonkers, which makes a lot of sense on paper. For example, he regularly gets chewed out by his class rep for being absent so much, but it always feels like an afterthought. We never see him hanging out with any of his classmates outside of school, and the school scenes themselves get barely a couple of minutes of screen time at the beginning and maybe ending of some episodes. So even when he says some nice things about his classmates and does something nice for them at the end of episode 4, they don't really feel like part of his life or part of this story. Most of, if not all the focus of the episodes is on his missions, which by no means is a criticism, really. That's how it's supposed to be. He's a badass special agent, and that's what we want to see. Him kicking ass on his missions, like fighting weird cyborg Nazis and shit like that. And there are enough moments during his missions that show that he is still human, still a cocky teenager that sometimes is in over his head and makes mistakes, and that he cares for his fellow man and woman. So the school stuff is just a distraction, in my opinion, not a valuable addition. The creator of the manga could have cut that part from his story without losing much, as far as I see it right now, unless his schoolmates become more important later, which might happen. We'll see. I didn't get that far in the manga, so maybe they get thrown into peril later and Yu has to save them, or he develops a relationship with a deeper relationship with one of his classmates. So I don't know. But right now, all the school scenes kind of feel weirdly out of place in this show, because you have like this, hey, here's you, the competent mission guy, and does all this crazy shit, and it's fun, it's entertaining, and it's wild shit. And then you get the school scenes, and it's like, this is a completely different anime. What? Okay, I don't see how this fits. Like, if you want to see a positive example of mixing two very different story components together, look no further than Full Metal Panic. In that show, the school life felt very important to Sosuke's character, because it was challenging him in more ways than one, because he was not used to blending in with that kind of crowd. Unlike you, he very much comes across like a machine in the beginning. Cold, stiff, calculated, focused solely on his mission. And his experiences at the school change him. Not only because of his interaction with Chidori, the person he's supposed to protect, but also because of the activities he has to partake in to support his cover. The friends he makes, the lighthearted mundanity of it all. It enriches his character and develops him. I don't feel like the school parts in Spriggan have the same effect on you. Don't get me wrong, I don't hate them. It just stuck out to me that they were kind of pointless. But, like I said, maybe that will change down the road. I don't remember all of the stuff that happens later in the manga, and I haven't even read the later half of the manga. So, we'll see what happens. I remember at least part of the school stuff being a factor that sparks you going on his mission in the movie. So, we'll see what happens here later on the show, if we get more seasons. But yeah, another interesting part is they updated this story from the 80s or 90s to the here and now. So there are smartphones and drones, which demand some rewrites. Like right in the first episode, Yu is too stupid to read Google Maps, so his client almost gets kidnapped. But it makes sense, I guess, since this is a sci-fi story. Like, making it a period piece rather than a modern-day adaptation would probably have felt weird. Then again, they could have just hand-waved that away by saying, well, we wanted to stick to the original. Maybe also would have been a good choice. Both options have their up and downsides, I guess. Like, for example, pulling a story set in the 80s or 90s to the here and now can lead to some inconsistencies. Like in episode 5, where Yu is pitted against Nazis, of course, hunting for a crystal skull. The leader of that group was ostensibly alive in 1945. So that guy would be pushing 90 now. But in the show, he doesn't look older than 50, maybe 60, which lines up with the original publication years of the manga. So yeah, you have to change some stuff to make these time-warped adaptations of older material work, and sometimes it just doesn't quite pan out. I think Banana Fish partially had the same problems, if I remember correctly. Not all of the stuff they modernized there worked great with what happens in the later parts of the story.
No, it really didn't. They did that adaptation dirty by not just leaving it in its time period. Mm-hmm. They absolutely should have. Yeah,
for Spriggan, I can't say that, but there's some parts that stick out where it's like, oh, okay, this doesn't make much sense, but it's not big things. It's not like where it completely detracts from the show, like the feeling that I got from the later parts of Banana Fish. And, here, it mostly works. It's just, okay, this small part here, it's a bit weird. But aside from that, they did a good job of pulling that show into the here and now. Episode 6 has some high highs, which is the last episode, has some high highs and very low lows in regards to CG. Like, the CG stone statue guardians look horrible. Like, they're like these weird statues, I think, with swords in their hands or something, that come alive. And they look like the choppiest pieces of shit ever. Like, it looks so bad. It looks so horrible. But then there's this multi-stage CQC fight of Yu against his former instructor, Bowman. And it looks cool as hell. It is also CG. It's fucking great. Like, the swerving camera, like, they battle up and down a fucking pyramid. It's amazing. It's like, wow, okay, you can do that too? these two parts don't mesh for me. What? Is this really like, did your A-team just do that scene? I don't, okay. I guess there's hope yet if you have more episodes where this kind of CG is happening. Like it's this great, incredibly fast-paced knife combat choreography, like cool tracking shots and dynamic camera angles. Like if this is how all the CG action scenes in the show looked, I'd be much less critical of the show. Like that scene is incredible. I just have to put it out there because I was harping on the CG so much. Like, fantastic. So the show can do that too. And the storyline with Bowman is also thematically intriguing because we finally get a glimpse into Yu's childhood, which, judging from the teaser at the end of the season and what I remember from the manga, the show will go much more into soon. Which is good, because, like I said, for the first season, Yu is mostly a quip-slinging ass-kicker with only very slight hints at character development. But I can definitely confirm there is more to him than that, and the story will elaborate on that, if we get the second season, that is. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I still liked Spriggan. But, this adaptation anyway, but it's a bit of a mixed bag. If you don't have as much of a problem with character CG in anime as I do, few people do probably, then check out the show definitely. Like, the story is pretty episodic so far, but there is, more actual plot around the corner, if I remember correctly, and what is here is very entertaining. Just, it's a quick-paced action show. A lot of it is very basic, and you have definitely seen this kind of stuff before, but it's very well pulled off. It's a really, really fun show of this kind of genre. So if we get more, things are going to start popping eventually also in the plot department, and you can look forward to that. And more so than the show, I recommend checking out the old movie, though, because, like I said, that one definitely holds up, even if it makes certain drastic changes to the source material to make it work as a movie. And if you don't want to wait until we get a second season of this, or if we just don't get one, period, there's always the manga with like 11 base volumes. It's a quick read, so you might check that one out as well anyway.
It's good that you liked it in spite of its flaws, 'cause, I mean, that's a theme we'll be coming back to in a bit.
Yes! Looking forward to that. But yeah, Spriggan is straightforward secret agent fun, and even though this adaptation wasn't what I hoped for, I still enjoyed it. So, if you're in the mood for some Metal Gear, Indiana Bond, Mission Impossible adventures, give it a look. Maybe you'll find something to enjoy too.
Sort of a weird transition going from the battlefield, Metal Gear, nanomachines, to school. We're going to school.
I mean, there is school in Spriggan, but like I said, it feels like an afterthought. I feel like in your show, the school is the main focus.
Yes. What school could that be? That could be Classroom of the Elite. If you fancy the Japanese title, that's Yokoso Jitsuryoku Shijo Sugi no Kyoshitsue. Your literal translation is, welcome to the classroom where merit is paramount.
Oh boy.
Can you tell it's a light novel?
No, not at all.
To be fair, a light novel with a less long-winded name than some others.
That's true. I mean, we have seen some light novel titles that stretch the definition of a title, and it's more a plot summary than anything else.
Like, I think there was one recently that was like, I'm saving 80,000 gold coins in another world for my retirement. And it's like, okay, no, all right. No, it has to stop. It needs to stop. Still not the longest one, but even so, it needs to stop.
Concepts get more and more ridiculous. It's just like, now it's just, I'm just gonna work because I need to live as a retiree.
But in another world.
Yes. Everything is more interesting in another world, I guess. Good lord.
At least this is a light novel that isn't an isekai. What?
Well, those exist. I mean, yes. But they're rare.
They do exist. Some of them are right. Some of them are right. Some of them are Some of them are this. So, Classroom of the Elite. Tokyo Metropolitan Advanced Nurturing High School is a state-of-the-art and prestigious school. The students there enjoy great freedom. They are allowed to dress as they wish and bring any personal belongings to school. But even though this place seems like a paradise, there is a dark side, because these amenities are only granted to exemplary students. Kiyotaka Ayano Koji, a rather reserved student of the D class, which consists of all of the quote-unquote bad students, actually just wants to go to school without drawing much attention to himself. However, when he meets the bold Suzune Horikita and the fun-loving Kikyo Kushida, his situation begins to change, and more or less involuntarily, he helps them to achieve their own goals. There's a lot of plot to unpack, and this discussion is not going to be it. If you want a TLDR version of the first 2 seasons of this show, because there's a 3rd season coming next year as well, I would recommend checking out Jeff Thu's roast of Classroom of the Elite.
I'm surprised that you would recommend a roast of the show that you apparently kind of liked.
And I want to be upfront in saying that, yeah, the show deserves to get roasted a little bit, because so this show starts off with a lot of your typical character archetypes, and it seems really played out and this and that and the other thing. But there's like a little bit beneath the surface for most of the characters that get screen time in this show, which I think is definitely the strong point. The overarching narrative of trying to rise in the ranks from D class to A class is there, and it kind of gets pushed on you in weird ways. Like there's this sports festival that is important for some reason. There's this like deserted island test between the characters where this one character shows up to D class and it's like, hey, I guess there's someone trying to sabotage you guys. I wonder who it could be. Could it be this person who just suddenly appeared before us? There's absolutely no way. No, absolutely not. So there's a lot of really, I will admit, dumb and contrived plot elements to this show. But the actual character development sprinkled in between is where the interesting stuff lies. And I feel like I've said this before with like, for instance, Persona 4. The overarching plot in that game, who cares? The social links, there you go. That's the good stuff, if you ask me.
Okay, I mean, I haven't played Persona 4, but I also like the overarching plot in Persona 5, plus, of course, all the character stories and social link stuff.
I mean, P4 is in the large part a Scooby-Doo mystery.
I mean, they're good Scooby-Doo mysteries.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I don't know how good they are in games in general. I mean, it's probably not a Knives Out or Glass Onion. Yeah. Just watch a great movie. But anyway... But, you know, those can be fun too, depending on how well they are thought out. So apparently, I mean, like I said, Persona 4 is like the bad guy pretty obvious from the get-go, or...
Yeah, in P4, it kind of boils down to, I wonder who it could be. There's
only one choice.
And I mean, they don't get super in your face about it, but it's also kind of like, if you take half a second to think about it, it's like, oh yeah, it's that character. Come on, dude.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I mean, it was the same in P5, but that also wasn't really the focus of the story. I feel like I think it was probably part like they used that part of P4. Maybe okay, who's the bad guy? Who's the traitor here? And then added to that all the political stuff, which was the real meat of the story, in my opinion, aside from all the little character stories. So I like that a lot. But yeah, we're going off the trail again. Fucking
Welcome.
Games. We need to do a game podcast sometime, because this is all these pent up game emotions need to be let out. But anyway,
maybe we do something where I actually play through games and talk about them. What?
That happens. weird.
Sometimes, not often.
But I guess so. So this is the same problem that Classroom of the Elite has, where it's like, hey, with the weird twists, you can see them coming a mile away, or who the culprit is, or whatever, and how it develops. And so the actual character development between the classmates is more interesting, or what is the main hold up here?
So, how can I describe this? I guess spoilers for season 1. So Kikyo, I talked about before. She's all like sugary sweet and wants to be nice and kind to everyone. And she's just like this awful, horrible witch who just is out to get Suzune expelled because reasons from middle school.
All right. Someone is holding a grudge.
But everyone in middle school kind of realized she was not a great person because she posted online on a blog about it. When you leave receipts behind, they're gonna be found.
No one said that middle schoolers are clever.
No, but like...
Yes, I get it. For the purpose of this story and being like, hey, all of these are super intelligent people. It's like, what? I get it.
So when Kiyotaka happens upon Kikyo just kind of screaming her brains out one night, and she's like, how can I even put this? She's like, you better not tell anyone what you saw. And he's like, what do I care about this? And she blackmails him by taking his hand and pressing it up against her boob to be like, your handprint is on my jacket now, and I have this evidence against you. It's like, what? There's so many other reasons his handprint could have gotten there.
Yeah, that's really... That is contrived. That is true.
And then we have this other dude, Ryuen, in another class who's just like, he is just like cartoonishly evil, dude.
Those characters can be super fun, though.
But okay, yes, and there's moments like that, but there's moments where he and Kiyotaka are trying to play like 5D chess against another. We're skipping past 4D. We're skipping past it.
We're already getting on motorcycles here.
Yeah.
Playing card games.
That's not the 5D I meant, but yes, it works. And every time Ryuen thinks he's outplayed Kiyotaka's like, nah, man, I got you. And there's...
Is that like presented in the right way? Is it doing some Phoenix Wright shit? I don't mean Phoenix Wright anime, which looked horrible, but the game where it's like, gasp, no, I saw through your games, through your mind games, and now this is my plan. And this, like, I mean, this shit needs to be presented in anime in the most dramatic way to make it fun. So is the show reveling in that? And
it kind of is, but there's still points where it's like, so Ryuen is kind of out to get Suzune as well, because Suzune's big motivation is that her brother, Manabu, also goes to this school. And a little bit of implied brocon, I guess, but she just wants to do right by her brother and show that, yeah, she can be the next, like, class rep, school pres, whatever, you know. She's just as capable as well. Okay, fine. But everything that Ryuen is up to is to, like, throw mud on her name and just make her seem like completely incapable. And when Suzune is like, you know, now I have it on record that you said all these things. I recorded everything. But Ryuen's like, ha, but I recorded you trying to get this evidence out of me. So I have this against you. But then Kiyotaka is like, yeah, well, I have this against you against Suzune against you. And it's like, oh, my God.
I mean, how often does that happen in the 2 seasons where it's like, is there actual plot progression or something? Or is it just, hey, here's these characters playing off against each other and playing their mind games against each other, but nothing really comes of that? Or is there actually, do you get the feeling that shit is actually happening in the show?
Well, Kiyotaka's big play is to try and move Class D up. Yeah, that's the big conceit of the show.
Makes sense. Yeah.
But he kind of he's kind of like trying to train the other characters in Class D to, think and plot for themselves too, so that he can become a bit more hands off.
Make them his disciples. Kind
of. But it's really weird because he's trying to be this like I said, try and train them to do this thing, but he's also getting in there to have his own interactions as well. Like there's this one girl, Kay, who she gets bullied around by the other girls, and it's kind of dumb, but in a way I sort of look at her and I didn't have fun in high school myself, and I was bullied a lot too. So I felt like I was able to connect with her on that. But it's also like, you're over the top anime bullying,
Yes, yeah.
But then there's
the actual sinister bullying that is more subtle than that, but maybe even more hurtful than what they display in the anime, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, there's something behind that I don't want to get too far into either. But then Ryuen and his flunkies kidnap her because Ryuen wants to find out who the Shadow Master behind Class D is. Because up to this point, the role has kind of shifted around a bit. But again, if you take half a second to think about it, you already know who it is. And he and his flunkies kidnap her, and they start waterboarding her.
What the fuck?
Yeah, and I'm like, this is really, really weird, dudes.
But I mean, that's the kind of over-the-top drama bullshit I would probably, I don't know, expect from an anime like that. So right now I'm not really, let's say, turned off by it. It sounds like a fun time, albeit just ridiculous.
Yeah.
So, I mean, are these plot contrivances and over-the-top bullshit, is that what is the most, or conceived as the most negative thing about this show? Or is there other stuff where it's like too much back and forth, not enough going on in the character department, maybe too many characters? I would imagine that with how many classes are these, so I guess there are 4 classes. So are all the characters from all the different classes important? Like, do they all get screen time? Because that seems like a giant cast.
We get to know, I don't know if we get to know every character in every class, to be honest, but we get to know a lot of them. Obviously, some are more important than others. But by getting to know some of these characters, and like I said, that's the strong part, is you get to see these characters sort of grow and get to know each other. Like in particular, there's one character, Ken, who's like this hothead jerk, bro athlete guy.
Shoryu rapper style, yeah, I get it.
Yeah, and he thinks he can do everything himself, blah 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 blah. But he was always kind of on his own his whole life, and he didn't really have many friends. But when Suzune kind of helps, give him a role and help give him purpose, it sort of helps even him out like a little bit, which is I like. That I really like to see with him in particular, because there's a lot of the characters that, are like, again, your typical anime caricature high schooler. But when you see them get to know each other and you get to see them being like, hey, maybe if you can help me out with this, we can get to know each other. We can be better friends. And with him in particular, I feel like it was the strongest. Suzune kind of starts to come around to Kiyotaka. And when she sort of starts to reach an understanding with her brother, that definitely helps to humanize her as well. Mm-hmm. So you definitely like to see that. Kikyo just kind of turns to a weirdo, evil antagonist because reasons. And again, she's trying to get Suzune expelled, but Suzune is like, hey, listen, maybe we can settle this in a more civil way. How about we bet all of this on an upcoming exam? And if I get the higher score, then we can let bygones be bygones. And if you get the higher score, then I'll leave the school.
Oh, okay.
Seems fair.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I don't know how equal of a trade that is.
Not really.
But they come to an agreement on that. It doesn't make Kikyo any, better of a character, because after that agreement, and spoilers, Suzune, comes out on top. She's like, okay, I'll leave you alone.
All right.
Yes.
Twist of the word here. You should have read the fine print in the contract of this ridiculous arrangement.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I got it.
Animation-wise,
who's handling it?
Lerke. We talked about them with
yes.
Astra Lost in Space, Danganronpa. They've done a whole bunch of other stuff too. Not all of the characters are on model all the time, which, is fine, but it feels like it's kind of a 50-50 split.
Is there even a much elaborate animation going on? I would expect this to be more of a dialogue-focused show with a lot of talking heads and maybe some dramatic shots when a secret is revealed or a bad guy outed or whatever.
Yeah, and I mean, that's fine on that part, but, there are some times where it's sort of like, you think you could have taken one more look at this frame, guys. But there is an action scene toward the end of the second season that is really well executed. So
I did not expect there to be an actual action scene in that kind of show.
Oh no, yeah, there's a knockdown drag out fight between two characters, and the way it's framed is really cool because it's like in this abandoned building, and there's like one of those like one of those construction like stand lights, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's sort of like backlighting the two characters. So, it kind of helps to mask some of the imperfections that go on, but on the whole, that scene is really cool.
All right, neat. That's unexpected. That's not what I saw coming for as a part of the show. But yeah, neat.
Yeah,
I mean,
so when they got to that scene, I was like, "Well, we're actually throwing hands in this show." Oh, it was really cool.
I'm glad that Lerche pulled that off.
Yeah, and it definitely was a strong point of confrontation between these two characters that I think moving forward will definitely have a big impact on one of them at least.
Okay, so did it feel like a well-built-up moment, and where it's like, okay, something will result from this, and this wasn't just a weird intermission or something like that?
I don't know what happens to the plot after this point because I haven't read the novels or the manga, but I feel like, yeah.
Cool.
Speaking of, I alluded to earlier, this was originally a light novel written by one Shogo Kinugasa and illustrated by Shunsaku Tomose. The light novel ran from 2015 to 2019 and then started again in 2020 under the name Classroom of the Elite Year 2.
Oh, okay. I was about to say, why did they take a break?
Right. So basically the first year was one complete arc and had its own light novel series, and then I guess they were doing the same with the manga. The first year ran from 2016 to 2022, and the second year is going as we speak.
So I assume the first year hasn't been fully covered yet in the show?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
It's kind of hard to track with the episode names to the light novel because they tried to be all highbrow, sticking your pinky out while drinking tea, because every episode title is like some long quote from a different philosopher.
What?
Yeah. Like, for instance, the season 1, episode 1, what is evil? Whatever springs from weakness.
Uh-huh. So who said that?
I don't have that written down, but on every episode title, they do have the person's name credited to each quote, so.
Okay. All right.
Sort of. The hilarious part is some of the episode titles are like light novel title length.
I mean, at least they're sticking to the brand.
Like episode 4, we should not be upset that others hide the truth from us when we hide it from ourselves.
Wow.
Ooh.
All right.
Can you read between the lines? Can you?
Yeah, it's super hard, but I think I can manage. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Can you?
Uh-huh.
I don't think you can. This show has all the subtlety of a ball-peen hammer. And yet, through all my complaining, I like this show. I like it for the character development, and I like it because I want to see where it goes from here. I like it because I like an underdog story. I want to see Class D rise to the top. I want to see them become the cream of the crop.
Yeah.
So I want to see where Kiyotaka's plans and whatnot take him and the others, because we ended the second season on this weird note between him and Kay, that was he really using Kay to further his ambitions all along, or did it just seem that way on the outside? Chin scratch.
I guess you'll find out once season 3 starts.
But yeah, a whole lot of people obviously worked on this show.
What anime is done by more than one guy?
I know, right?
I haven't heard about this.
But the first season was directed by Hiroyuki Hashimoto and Seiji Kishi. Seiji Kishi, I had come up previously when talking about Danganronpa, Yuki Yuna as a hero. Did the Persona 3 movies. Hashimoto had done some stuff like Excel World, close to my heart, Bento.
Yay!
And the adaptation of Robotics Notes. Season 2 was done a lot more by Yoshihito Nishoji, who worked on Astra Lost in Space.
Mm-hmm.
And
which we both liked.
Mm-hmm. And Data Life. So, and it was written by 4 people across the 2 seasons. Aoi Akashiro, who did stuff like Konosuba. Ohine Ezaki, who worked on Killing Bites and Shield Hero.
Yay! The dichotomy of trash. One is enjoyable, the other is not.
Also written by Hayato Kazono, who also worked on Killing Bites. And Yasushi Shigenobu, who worked on Lord Elmaloy the Second's case files. I always put that apostrophe in the wrong place when I say the name. So yes, a little bit of the plot contrivance might come in from that too.
Maybe, yeah.
Because I learned from Jeff Thu speaking about this that apparently the show is missing certain context from the original novels, and I don't know offhand what that context is.
I wonder if that was already missing in the manga adaptation, or if it just decided to additionally cut that.
Could be. Don't know. A further research would be required, and that seems like a real deep dive that would have taken a lot of time. Sorry, listeners.
I hear you. No, we are both full-time employed. We can only do so much.
Yeah. Music in the first season was done by Ryo Takahashi. Aka 13, Princess Principal, Beyond the Boundaries, Skate the Infinity.
Yeah.
And the second season was worked on by Kana Hashiguchi and Masaru Yokoyama. Again, Astra Lost in Space, Fate Apocrypha, Fruits Basket 2019, Gundam Iron-Blooded Orphans.
All good stuff.
Hyperdimension Neptunia. You know what? Neptunia is stupid, but it revels in its stupidity. So, Neptunia fans, you're all right with me.
Unite. Rise up.
The most literal interpretation of gamers rise up. Again, there's a lot of moving parts to this story, so I didn't want to dive super deep into it. Hell, I spent longer talking about this than I thought I would. But in spite of its weird contrivances, I feel like there's things to enjoy about this show, and I'll be there to watch season 3. Maybe if they're able to clean up maybe if they're able to clean up the overarching writing a little bit, that'll hopefully keep it carrying forward. But again, the characters are what kept me in. And if all of that sounds good to you, shrug, you can watch it on Crunchyroll and Funimation. Depending on where you live, it might also be available on Netflix and Hulu. But if you're in for a classroom drama that's a little bit of different flavor, it's worth checking out.
All right, guys and girls. Sorry. Girls and guys. Girls should come first. Yeah, let's talk about tokusatsu. We have talked about tokusatsu before, on occasion.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, I think the most recently were our reviews of Gridman and Daina Zenon, because those stem from a tokusatsu show, namely the original Gridman show. But I also have mentioned that I like some of this stuff, this particular medium or genre, depending on how you want to classify it, on occasion. And my favorite, I mean, I've watched some Power Ranger stuff, not the Super Sentai original, but actually Power Ranger stuff. But my favorite tokusatsu thing in recent years, or in general, has always been, since I knew what that actually was, Kamen Rider. Which is usually a character, maybe sometimes cyborg, maybe something else, sometimes normal humans. I think in recent times, usually normal humans, that rides a bike, has a belt that
back up. A Kamen Rider rides?
Yeah, It's weird, right? Sometimes Moomin Riders do too. Hell, we get a season 3 of that, and it's animated by MAPPA. Fuck yeah. Anyway, back to the other rider. So, usually that character has a belt, and with that belt, they can transform into a masked superhero, usually Buck style, so has like a huge eyes on their helmet. And sometimes even more than that. That makes them look more like an insect. And then they fight evil. Sometimes they have a hero scarf, sometimes they don't. And yeah, that's been pretty much Kamen Rider for a long time now. The original Kamen Rider was created by Shotaro Ishinomori in 1971. Ishinomori also created Cyborg 009 and Kikaider. 009 has gotten several anime versions already.
I remember watching the animated version of Kikaider and thinking the first series was actually kind of cool because it was like more contemplative on the ideas of, robotics and androids and whatnot. And then the second one was just like a big action show, and I was like, what happened? I like the thoughtful stuff, not the we got a boom boom kaboom now. That's what Cyborg 009 was for. That was the action show.
And I mean, Cyborg 009 was also, again, a different styling because it was more like of this, kind of super team crew with cyborgs with all different abilities and stuff like that, right? But yeah, Kamen Rider usually here, this one guy fights this evil organization or other riders, right? That happened more so in recent years, where you have Kamen Rider shows that have like up to 20 different riders or shit like that. Or crossover shows where they have pull a rider from a different show, show of Kamen Rider from a different season or different series, if you want to call it. And then just have them cross over. All that happens in movies or shit like that. So there has been some wild shit, and they have fought several different forms of evil in the show. And yeah, each new season of Kamen Rider usually gets a new main hero, different character, changing cast and all that. That's, I guess, what has given this franchise the ability to run for so long, because each new series is kind of slightly different. Some are darker, some are more lighthearted and slapsticky. So it is kind of diverse enough to keep it going for a while. Of course, you have recurring stuff in terms of character development, in terms of plot structure and stuff like that. But each Kamen Rider brings a different flavor to it. In recent years, that also encompasses all the gimmicks. Before, it was just, hey, here's a a buck guy with a belt, and sometimes he rides a bike, sometimes he has also maybe a car, sometimes he can fly, and that was the extent of it. But in recent years, it's like, hey, they have like maybe all the stuff that the main hero or and all the other rider characters in the show interject in the belt has some weird gimmick. Sometimes it's this weird USB stick thing. Sometimes it's actual weird fruits, like in Gaim. It's just, and of course the costumes that they then don reflect these gimmicks, right? They have like these things attached to it now that kind of, hey, they used a cherry thing, and that enables them to do a certain special attack, but also now their suit looks a bit cherry styled and stuff like that. And I guess that comes with, that being super marketable and also kind of being the theme of the show. Like each Kamen Rider show in recent time has had like a certain theme that these transformations relate to. Like I said, has kind of plants and fruits as a main theme that weirdly enough relates to the main plot relatively well, and the deeper themes. Kamen Rider Build is all about experimentation, so the main character has like these bottles that he can shake and just put into his belt, and then he can combine different flavors of serums they created of different experiment stuff that gives them the power of a tank or the power of a jumping rabbit or shit like that, right? So that has crept up more in recent time, where they make that stuff gimmicky to being able to market it better to kids, to sell more toys, and a bunch of different flavors of toys, right? So yeah, that has been creeping up. So, but it's also fun. Sometimes they, of course, go a bit overboard with it, but that also keeps the show more diverse, because there's always something different they do with that kind of shit, and different power sets, and the suits always look different. Different color coded and stuff like that. And then they bring in other riders as well that make it also more interesting. So there's always something to see. It never gets really super stale. The plots can get really boring and bad sometimes, and then it makes sense to tune out. But just in terms of look and tone, it's always slightly different and diverse. And of course, it makes sense for such a long franchise for some of the seasons to be better than others, some of them just not coming together correctly, not being written that well, because there's always different directors and different writers at the helm for each new season. So it's not that there's that much consistency there. So of course you also get inconsistency in terms of quality. That's fine too, but that also means if you get a particularly bad Kamen Rider show, a good one might be around the corner, like the one we're talking about today, which is Kamen Rider W. Which the show I'm actually kind of reviewing, the anime adaptation, which is a sequel called Fuuto PI or Fuuto Tante, if you want to go all Japanese.
I gotta be honest, when I saw the name, I didn't really think much of it. At first I was like, Fuuto Pi? Like the number? And then I saw the Japanese name was Tante, and I was like, oh, I'm an idiot.
Well, maybe they should have just called it Fuuto Detective or Kamen Rider Double Fuuto PI.
Or put like periods between the P and the I. So
yes. It's not
branding
a cake.
People.
It's not a pie as in to be eaten and not a mathematical thing. So, yeah, weird choice. But again, it's Tante in Japanese, and it's a sequel to the 2009/2010 Kamen Rider show, Kamen Rider W, and thus is part of the second phase of the Heisei Kamen Rider era. Kamen Rider shows are generally categorized by the Japanese era they aired in. So the first being the Showa era, which started in 1926 and ended in 1989, with the first Kamen Rider series hitting the airwaves in 1971, like I said. And after that comes the Heisei era, which ran from 1989 to 2019. And since then, we have been in the Reiwa era. So for the Showa era, we have 9 rider shows. For Heisei, we have a whopping 21 shows. Oh. And for Reiwa, so far, we have 5 or 7, depending if you want to count the big era ender crossover show Zio for both Heisei and Reiwa, or not. And if you want to include the anime spin-off we're talking about today or not. And I'm a Heisei kid. That's when that franchise popped up on my radar with Kamen Rider Fights in 2003. And the last show that I have completely watched in the form of Kamen Rider Build is also from that era. And like I said, Kamen Rider Double is somewhat in the middle of that. It kind of started the second phase of the Heisei Kamen Rider era in 2009. I hadn't checked out the show since it aired. But since I'm a madman and wanted to properly prepare for this review...
Oh boy.
I rewatched all 49 episodes of the Kamen Rider Double show. Watched 4 movies, which are all canon, by the way. And which I hadn't seen before. And of course, then watched the new anime sequel, Fuuto PI, which is 12 episodes. That's a lot.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, and we're gonna get into not all of that, but some of it. But before we actually get to Fuuto PI, since it's a sequel, I feel like I have to fill you in on the base story developments and character constellations of its predecessor, or we'll all be kinda lost, especially if you have never, ever tackled Kamen Rider or checked out any Kamen Rider show before. Also, I'll try to keep the spoilers for Double to a minimum, but some will be in there. So yeah, strap in and Henshin a go-go, baby. In the ecologically minded Fuuto, the windy city, where nearly everything is powered by wind turbines, the people live in harmony. However, the rich Sonosaki family sell mysterious devices resembling USB flash drives called Gaia memories to criminals and other interested parties who use them to become monsters called dopants, committing crimes with the police force powerless to stop them. To make matters worse, the Gaia memories carry a dangerous toxin that causes the users to go insane to the point where they could die from the life-threatening devices. After the death of his boss, the self-proclaimed hard-boiled, actually half-boiled, detective Shotaro Hidari works with the mysterious Philip, who possesses the true Gaia memory, a virtual library of all the world's knowledge in his head, to investigate crimes which involve dopants. Using their own Gaia memories, Shotaro and Philip use the Double Driver belts to transform and combine into Kamen Rider Double to fight the dopant menace and keep Fuuto safe. While joined in their fight by the daughter of Shotaro's past mentor, Akiko Narumi, and later investigator Ryo Terui, who transforms into Kamen Rider Axel, the mystery of Philip's past, his relation to the Sonosaki family, and their museum organization will be revealed and change the lives of our 2 heroes that make up one great detective forever. So yeah, as you can surmise probably from the plot summary, this is a detective show, basically. And that makes sense that they call the anime sequel just the Fuuto Detectives, I guess, or the Fuuto Detective, which that's what Kamen Rider Double is. It's just a detective show. Like every 2 episodes get a new case, and that is maybe linked to the main plot, but also sometimes not really. And it's just a character story with new side character, or maybe recurring side character. And that usually culminates in Kamen Rider Double having to beat the shit out of a monster called a dopant in this show. They always have different names in different Kamen Rider shows, but here they're called dopants. And yeah, that's the names. Like the Gaia memories are thinly veiled metaphors for drugs. Mm-hmm. So basically, Double is beating the shit out of meth heads in every episode. Or doping victims. I don't fucking know. It's funny. I don't really know how Gaia memories actually work. Like, do they rewrite DNA? Like, they give superpowers without using a driver, which is, the belt. They corrupt the hosts. At least they seem to be kind of addictive when used with the implanted bio interface connector instead of a driver. It's like these weird connection points that are implanted under the skin, and then normal people can just use these Gaia memories. Otherwise, you would need a belt to make them work. But if you use a belt, I think there are no side effects or less side effects. So yeah, but these are for the prestigious few, like for the Sonosaki family, and of course Shotaro and Philip have a driver. And yeah, that's pretty much the structure of Kamen Rider Double for most of the series. It's pretty much a straightforward shonen thing with a detective edge to it. Philip can access all information about the world, but of course it's too much to sort through on his own. So Shotaro gives him specific keywords he can use to narrow down the search. And, this always looks like Philip is sifting through the weapon shelves from Matrix, only with books. Like, it's this white virtual background, and then just bookshelves flying past him, and she's just, I picked this one. It's a neat idea to visualize that.
I think I saw some images or clips of that. Maybe you linked them to me.
Yeah, they're also in the anime. They're in the OP of Fuuto PI and everything, so you can see them there. Of course, it's bullshit in more ways than one, because some of those keywords wouldn't narrow down any search even remotely, but that's kind of how it works. Like, Shotaro is the active part. He goes through the city. He, does some investigation stuff. He has a lot of kooky informants that are really fun. And then, he comes up with some words, and he goes to Philip, and Philip looks up all the shit, and that in the, in the virtual library, and then they narrow it down to the actual culprit and try to find them and beat their ass. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. Their catchphrases galore, like pretty much in all Kamen Rider series, I guess. Once they transform, they do like this pose where Shotaro points at the screen, then moves his head toward the screens, and it's like, count up your sins. it's
okay,
neat.
Dude.
Yeah, it's very JoJo-esque in that regard, where it's like, yep, all right. And they're a fun team. Shotaro says he's all about the hard-boiled lifestyle, and I guess his background is because his master was killed, which is kind of a hard-boiled theme, I guess. But he's mostly just a doofus. So is Akiko, the daughter of his master. Like, they're the most responsible for the comedic relief in the show, I would say, especially their interactions, because it's very loud, it's very over the top. And, they bounce off each other when it comes to overacting and everything. But it's fun. It's occasionally slapsticky, but it's also, there's some nice reaction faces, especially from Shotaro, because he's caught off guard by a lot of the shit that happens in this show. He doesn't come across as an idiot or anything. He's just, he thinks a bit too highly of himself in certain regards. He wants to appear like the super suave, hard-boiled, cool detective, especially in front of certain women and stuff like that, and comes across like a gentleman.
As you do.
Yes, and then Akiko comes from behind and hits him over the head with one of her patented green slippers, and it's like, what the fuck are you doing? You're not hard-boiled at all. And Philip says as much as well. It's like, Shotaro, you're just half-boiled. That's a standard phrase. Like, because Shotaro is also, he's a very emotional guy. Like, quite the complete opposite to Philip, which makes that dynamic pretty interesting. Philip is super smart, but he gets easily sidetracked when someone throws a random topic at him, and he doesn't know anything about that yet, because he immediately wants to research it, which is, the negative side effect of him when they try to research a case and something else comes across the way, and he's like, oh shit, that's new, that's interesting, I'm just gonna research that. So that's where the comedic factor comes in for him. He's a very nice counterpoint to Shotaro. Shotaro has a pretty good moral compass. He's like, there's this scene where he stops a dude from taking revenge, even though the target is a scumbag who put the guy's sister in a coma. But Shotaro knows that revenge won't save the guy's problem, and the scumbag is also part of the city he swore to protect. That's one of the main themes of the show as well. It's like, hey, I'm here to protect the city. And he's kind of the Green Arrow of this universe, where he goes to the villains and says, like, you failed this city. It's like, all right, okay. And he's very much a guy who pours his heart into his job, and who believes in people, and who believes in the good heart of the city. And Philip is much more cold-blooded and often seems to lack empathy when it comes to the people involved in their cases, criminals and victims alike. Like, he says the city would benefit from letting the boy that I mentioned earlier take out the scumbag and kill him, and they should just keep out of that and let them solve that. And Shotaro's like, no, we can't do that. That won't solve anything. And he calls that Shotaro's justification for interfering half-boiled, where it's like, you always come across like, you try to come across as like this hardened detective who does only what's necessary and doesn't put his emotion into it. But in the end, you always go the compassionate route. And Philip doesn't really gel with that all the time, at least in the beginning, because he can't relate. He has some problems with certain things that should be normal to a human being, but there are some reasons for that, why he's behaving that way, some story reasons, and his background, why he has some problems relating. For once, one thing, he doesn't remember his past. He doesn't know what happened before Shotaro and his master freed him from a research lab. That's kind of what makes up his character, and one of the main mysteries of the show is like, where does Philip come from? Why does he have this connection to the original Gaia memory? Why does he have this virtual library in his head? What is going on? And why can him and Shotaro like form this masked rider? So yeah, that's the fun part. That's the intriguing part of the show, I guess. And the show takes its sweet time to get to that, I guess. Like I said, there's some parts that are just very episodic and where that main plot doesn't really move forward at all. But they get there eventually. And while it's at some points, it's pretty predictable, I would say the show is pretty straightforward in general. The mysteries are also not super complicated at all. It's still a kid's show, so that makes sense. But don't expect any great brain twists from this. But yeah, it's still good. It's still like, it makes sense, and the character development and where the characters start and where they end up makes sense. And it's just a lot of fun. Like, Shotaro narrates in his own head in certain parts of some episode, like, you know, a detective from a book or a movie would do, because he thinks that's cool.
Really film noir.
Yeah, exactly. That's his inspiration. So he's a very funny, but super sympathetic character. And so is Philip. At least he becomes that at some point. In the beginning, he's a bit irritating because he's so flippant about certain things. And he's like, God, Shotaro, you're such a fucking mark. And that changes. And Akiko is in the middle of that, where she's like the point of view character, the normal girl, where it's like, what the fuck is going on here? Would someone explain this to me? And all she really wants to do is learn what happened to her dad and also get money from the agency, from the detective agency that she takes over. First, she wants to evict Shotaro, but then she finds out that, hey, we can actually make some money with this shit, so let's just do that. So when it comes to the aforementioned gimmick of this particular show, is that Kamen Rider W, so Philip and Shotaro, can combine the abilities of two different Gaia memories. All these Gaia memories give special abilities. You know, when a monster uses them, they kind of transform into that monster. There's a T-Rex Gaia memory. Like, all these Gaia memories are kind of memories of the past in digital form, so from history. So it could be an animal, it could be, I don't know, a certain material, it could be whatever, really. It can be anything, which makes it pretty easy to utilize them for different monster designs and for different abilities. So our main characters have like this specific set of a couple of Gaia memories they can combine, and that have all different characteristics. For example, the metal memory equips Kamen Rider W with the combat staff. And with the fire or cyclone memory, he can equip that staff with an elemental attack. They can combine these kind of different abilities. They can use the abilities on their own, like have heat punches or, you know, fire punches, or shoot fire attacks with a gun or whatever, depending on what memory they use. But they can also combine them. So it's really interesting. Like when he combines the elastic abilities of the Luna memory with the trigger memory, which gives him a gun, like I said, he can make his shots homing and so on. Like, it's a cool idea, and it gives way to a bunch of different ability combinations. Kamen Rider Build, like I said, had the same kind of system, and it was fun here too. Also a great Kamen Rider series if you want to check it out. But yeah, I that's one of the things that I guess was the most new about this particular Kamen Rider show. It's like, hey, you have two different abilities and you combine them in different ways, which I immediately from the get-go already liked. It's like, hey, and of course, it's so fucking sinister when it comes to selling this shit to kids, because of course you want all the Gaia memories, so you can combine them in different ways. And of course you can get a belt, and every time they use one of the memories, it gets a specific voice sample. And you could put it in the belt, and then it combines these samples together. Like, for example, their base form is Cyclone and Joker. So when they inject that into the belt with the very prolific voice of the Golden Kamuy narrator says, Cyclone, Joker! And then Henshin and transform. So after a while, you just yell that shit with the characters. when they transform because it's so fun, and they always get the best voices for the belts. In Build, they got Norio Wakamoto, of course.
Oh.
Yeah, so that's great. So it's really fun when these actors go really overboard with pronouncing these fun these fun transformation effects and everything. So yeah, that's the fun part and the mechanics of how this works. And yeah, usually Shotaro dons the belt, and so does Philip. And when they combine, Philip's consciousness moves kind of to Shotaro, and they are in the same body. It's not really exactly explained how that works. According to the show, I think Philip's consciousness just surfs the waves of the memory of the Earth and just hijacks kind of the half of Shotaro's brain. It's really weird. It's a really stupid explanation, but somehow it works. Through the driver belt or something, that's how it works. And the memory he uses gets transformed, like the USB stick, the Gaia memory, gets transformed to Shotaro's belt, and then they combine into one person. And that gets flipped around when they use a specific memory, the Fang memory, then Philip becomes the host body for a change. So it's interesting. It's an interesting concept. The funny part is that every time Shotaro transforms into double, sometimes Philip stands next to him and just drops unconscious next to him. And Akiko has to slide in and catch him, because otherwise he would hit his head or something. But yeah, that's how it works. And then they share one body. So yeah, interesting concept. The show focuses on that a lot, that they share the same body, and that comes with its own problems and everything once they are transformed. But it's a fun idea, and it was pretty new, like I said, to Kamen Rider as a concept. Yeah, another important character is Akiko, like I said, who is like this feisty daughter of Shotaro's mentor who got killed. In the beginning, Shotaro can't tell Akiko that her father is dead because he feels responsible. It's also the reason why he doesn't want her to be an active part of the investigations, because he doesn't want her to die on him too, which is understandable. Yeah. But of course, Akiko is too headstrong for that. She's actually pretty reckless in parts, but you gotta admire her guts. And at some point, Shotaro recognizes the same fierceness in her that her father had. So that's cool. After that, sadly, and once Akiko gets filled in on her father's demise, which weirdly enough happens in one of the movies and not in the actual show. It's
what?
Yeah. So there are 4 movies, which are, like I said, all canon, and all kind of do, well, 2 of them not necessarily, only very small bits, but all do stuff that is kind of relevant to the plot developments of the show. So you can't really skip those movies, especially not the first one.
So some of them take place during the show or before, or
yeah, exactly. The first takes place after episode 14, I think. Then the second one after episode 42, and the other 2 take place after the series before Fuuto PI happens. But all of them are kind of related to the show. 2 of them are not that important, or even 3 maybe. The Excel movie is super fun, but it's also, it's only relevant in that if you want to watch Fuuto PI, it fills in some of the story gaps between Kamen Rider W and Fuuto PI. But the first movie is really integral because it fills you in on the entire thing leading up to the actual show, which was the beginnings night where Shotaro and his master free Philip from the lab. And that doesn't really get tackled in the show itself, but almost entirely tackled in the movie. So yeah, if you watch any of the movies, definitely watch that one. It's weird because the second half of the movie also wrapped up the story from the previous Kamen Rider show. So yeah, you can skip that, I guess, but definitely watch the first half of that because that is explaining a lot. But yeah, like I said, after that, it's kind of a shame that Akiko is mainly the comedic relief. They don't really do anything with her dad being Shotaro's dead mentor after that. That could have been something that drives a wedge between her and Shotaro. That could have been an interesting point of drama or stuff like that. And they do a little bit in regards to that in the first movie, but it's really not a lot, and nothing in the series itself. She and Ryu Terry, who later comes into the show on the search for revenge because Dopan killed his family, and he becomes the second writer of the show, Kamen Rider XL. They become a thing. Like, they actually move in together and get married after the show, which is kind of neat. It doesn't really happen in anime, I guess. I mean, they're older characters. Like, they're not high schoolers. They're 20-somethings. So that kind of makes sense. And, you know.
It's the perfect time to get married, isn't it, Shinzo Abe?
Yeah, I mean, that show was before that became super big, I guess. But it's fun that she and Ryu become a thing. And, you know, they show that. They go into that full force, especially in Fuuto PI. I was like, no, these two are actually married. So that's neat. That's actually progression in terms of story and what the characters do. And I never would have expected that at the beginning of the show, because these characters don't seem like they would like each other that much. But I guess opposites attract after a while. So that was fun. But I would have liked for her to get an actual integral arc that is part of the story, really. I mean, she's important in regards of Philip having more people around him that treat him in a certain way and that he can relate to and that he can learn from to regain his humanity and stuff like that. But aside from that, she doesn't really do that much. Like, there's one case or two cases that focus on her, and that's it. And after that, she's mainly the comedic relief. And then later, it's like, hey, now she's married to Ryu, and they are kind of like this cute couple together. But that's kind of it. So, could have done more with that character, which was a bit of a letdown for me, because I liked her character. She's super fun, and the actress is doing a really good job with her character to make her fun and engaging. So, like I said, the mainline Kamen Rider series are very shonen kid focused, with the amounts of comedy bits and slapstick varying from series to series. At least in recent time, it wasn't always necessarily the case in terms of themes. There are also some more adult-focused, seinen-styled Kamen Rider shows, like Amazon's, which appropriately is streaming on Amazon.
Oh.
Or most recently, Kamen Rider Black Sun. But Double is definitely one of the more kid-friendly ones. It's, like I said, there are a lot of gimmicks here. It's pretty goofy. Sure, there are some deaths, but it's all pretty bloodless. We have some interesting bad guys, like in the form of the Sonozaki family, which all go through their own development, which is kind of interesting. At least some of them, not all of them. There's one guy who starts as a lieutenant and gets kind of a sympathetic development, even if it is his ultimate downfall, kind of. But it's cool. It's cool that they didn't keep the bad guys one-sided. And of course, there's some later developments in the show that relate heavily to one of our characters, already teased in the plot summary before. But yeah, it's cool. There's neat little bits where they put there's an episode that is all about the song contest, and they put the performance of the OP of the show in the jury of the song contest as a neat little cameo. Also, Ichiro Mizuki, who recently passed away, one of the gods of anime music, I guess. So yeah, that was neat. There's some pretty basic but cool developments in the show. Like, one of the pivotal moments is Philip realizing that Double is worthless if he's just a war machine. Like, it needs Shotaro's compassion as much as Philip's cold intelligence and power to be a true force of justice, which is one of the first like big points that glues them even more together as characters and friends and everything. And what I also kind of liked, I mean, counts for a lot of the Kamen Rider shows I watch, is that the show is kind of small scale. I mean, there are series like Build or Gaim that definitely go for bigger scope in terms of characters, location, and the central threat, but Double is definitely one of the smaller scale shows, like small main cast of heroes, small group or core villains, one location with the town Fuuto actually being kind of the main character, like I mentioned before. It's the JoJo's Diamond is Unbreakable of Kamen Rider, if you want to draw a comparison to another franchise that changes casts and locations with each new series.
Well, I imagine that helps give it some focus.
Yes, absolutely. Might also, some people might say, okay, for this kind of small cast, it's 49 episodes might be a bit much. And I can agree to that. Like I said, some of the cases that they solve, you can definitely ditch. But then again, it's not offensive. It's not like it's super boring or anything. It's just like, okay, if you want to go plot only, you could have maybe cut like 1/3 or half of the show. but it's also learning about the characters, learning about the town, learning about all the cool key characters in this town. And that this was JoJo's Diamond is Unbreakable was. Like, how much of that show is actual main plot? Not that much.
Yeah.
Like, the stuff with Kira is very much at the end. And before that, we get like a few things that are related to that and all, the why people suddenly get stands and everything, right?
Well, the first opening song says it all. Crazy, noisy, bizarre town.
Exactly, and that's what Fuuto is. It's filled with just as many kooky characters. There's one central evil in the town that causes a lot of other evil to spring up, and then kind of at the very end of the show, it's up to our main heroes to take out that evil. But aside from that, there's a lot of episodic shit going down where it's just, hey, here's this mystery. There's a person that got robbed or killed or whatever, and we have to find out why and who did it. Who is the antagonist here? Who's the culprit? Who has a motive to harm this person or commit that crime? And that's, of course, it's a detective show. So that works. And like you mentioned in your previous review, Persona 4, I guess that's what it also kind of is. It's a bit of a whodunit, and it's a straightforward whodunit. Like, there are not big twists here. They're not super... I mean, there's some small twists where it's like, oh, okay. But most of them you can see coming, and it's fine. It's not like they're pulling shit out of their ass most of the time. It's just, okay, I get why that happened. Some of the explanations are a bit weird. Like I said, the stuff with the conscious transference and stuff like that. But, it works in the framework of this universe. So it's okay. But, all you really have to be able to tolerate in this show is exaggerated anime acting with real actors, which might be a point of contention. I don't know. Maybe for some people who are like, I can do this in anime when these characters are yelling a lot and they're just playing this role larger than life all the time. Like, your enjoyment of this kind of show will heavily depend on whether you can do that or not, in my opinion. Because for some people, it's like, yeah, I can accept this when these characters are animated, but once they're real actors, this doesn't work for me. So if you're one of those people, sure, I can understand. But for me, it works. The action is there, the comedy is there, and I feel the acting chops for most of the characters in this show are good enough to convey what they're trying to convey. So even in a more dramatic moment, it also works. Sure, it's not on a level of, grade A or even grade B American shows when it comes to the acting and everything, but it's good enough and it works. And if you consider in the back of the head, yeah, this is just an anime with live action actors, then it works especially well, in my opinion. It has a lot of CG, which is kind of bad in parts. It's 2009 TV CG, so you know what you're getting there. But weirdly enough, it doesn't bother me nearly as much as bad CG in anime for some reason. At least it's fluid. It's kind of like, yeah, you see that this is an alien thing here, but mostly it's only the vehicles again. Sometimes the characters, when they do their action shots, there's partially CG involved, but it works. It works better for some reason than a traditionally animated anime where suddenly the characters are CG, like in Spriggan, which I talked about earlier. So I didn't mind it. It's not good-looking CG, but it's fine. It's okay. I can live with that in this kind of show for some reason.
So long as it's serviceable in what they're trying to do,
Absolutely, and I think it works. And I don't go overboard with it. There are some scenes where it's like, oh, okay, here's the sweeping shot with a special attack at the end, so we do make that all CG. And that, of course, looks a bit wonky on this kind of budget. But it's okay. The movies look better. So that's fine. And most of it is live action without CG. It's just hand-to-hand combat, people in actual suits punching the shit out of each other, and then, doing some special attacks or, fighting with a stick or whatever, or with a gun that shoots special effects or whatever. So that's fine. It's funny special effect shit, and it's people in ridiculous costumes, like maybe very, very capable cosplayers. But, that's what you get in tokusatsu. And if you can live with that and actually get enjoyment out of it, like I can, you will have a good time with this show, because what they do with that, they do very well. There's some more interesting side characters here. I don't want to go that much more into Kamen Rider W because we already have to talk about the anime adaptation. But yeah, there's some, like I said, some informants, like a guy named Watcherman, who is like the guy who finds out things for Shotaro. Then there's this weird guy who always, for the entire year, cosplays as Santa, called Santa-chan, and always brings presents. Then there are these two schoolgirls who are informants for Shotaro, and they always hang around. They're a part of some episodes. You have some dumb cops that are part of a lot of episodes. Like there's this one guy, Jino, who has a back scratcher for some reason with him all the time. And
sometimes you just gotta scratch your back.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's a fun dude. And the guy who's playing him plays that character the best way possible. Like, and his sympathetic backstory is that he's a really dumb cop. Like he was so bad at being a policeman that he let go Shotaro when he did something stupid in his past all the time, so that he came around and became a friend of his for some reason. It's super funny. And, he's just a really good guy that gets distracted by the stupidest shit, like, hey, there's a UFO. And he looks up and Shotaro is able to run away.
God.
So, yes. But, they kind of became friends. And now Shotaro helps him with cases. So, because he turned his life around with the help of his mentor. And, it's funny. Like, the show is populated with so many sympathetic, endearing characters. Just like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Diamond is Unbreakable. So, like I said, those shows share a lot of commonalities. If you like the one and you can tolerate live action, Japanese live action, you might actually, that's the Kamen Rider show you might want to go for, because, yeah, that's what I had to think of most of the time when I watched this. Like, man, now that I've seen JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Diamond is Unbreakable, this seems very familiar. But in a good way, in a very good way. Yeah, like I said, Ryu, Terui is in there, the Kamen Rider Axel, who has a very tragic backstory. He's actually more hard-boiled than Shotaro, I would say. He's also very stern and revenge-driven in the beginning, has anger management issues, like explodes at everyone. And I would say his development is probably the most consistent. He takes some time to overcome his blind hatred, but he gets there, and then he becomes like a pillar of this character formation and, of the other two main characters, and helps them out a lot. And it becomes a real sympathetic character in his own right. In the beginning, he seems like a real dick and really annoying, but after a while, and his exchanges with Akiko and everything, which ultimately leads to their marriage, makes him a very good character and interesting character in its own right. And it feels very fulfilling once he gets to where he was supposed to get in terms of character development. Yeah, last word on the story, and that is a bit negative. Like, there's a bait and switch at the end that brings a new evil organization in last minutes, like really the last 2 episodes or something.
Oh, that's one of those.
And that isn't great. Like, and they're getting rid of the, up to that point, main antagonist pretty unceremoniously, replacing him with a total cardboard antagonist kun. That seems like a super big waste, because right before that, they actually explained why the main villain up to that point did what they did. And it felt like, oh, now we're getting this super cathartic final battle between those. And then he just, with one hit, basically just gets taken out. And and then we get for 2 episodes or something like this fucking charisma vacuum. It's a weird choice. I don't get it. I mean, I kind of get it. Like, they make this final bad guy this dark mirror to Philip, like someone who didn't have any people in his life that helped him regain his humanity. But it just doesn't hit the way it's supposed to, because he has so little screen time up to that point and is so goddamn boring. So yeah, there are definitely Kamen Rider series with better build-up and a more cathartic finale and more climactic finale. Build and Gaim, for example, the latter being penned by Gen Urobuchi, so that's not really a surprise. So that's also a really good one. If you want to have a Kamen Rider series with a really strong plot, definitely go for Kamen Rider Gaim. And yeah, like I said, Kamen Rider Build, because that is done by the same team that did this show, Kamen Rider Double. So these are probably my 3 favorite Kamen Rider shows at the moment. So if you want to check out any of those, you're probably gonna have a good time, in my opinion, with Gaim being the strongest one in terms of actual story. But yeah, the ending of Double is still pretty satisfying where it counts, because it focuses on Shotaro's and Philip's bond, which was always the emotional core and strongest part of the show. Also showing that Philip is finally able to fully relate to and appreciate the people in his life. That's like a great wrap up for his character arc. And considering what we learn about him in the final set of episodes, it's not a surprise that he was wrestling with his humanity or potential lack thereof throughout the series. So it all feels pretty well put together by the end. Just the small wrinkle that just the final bad guy is just this just this fucking cardboard thing, just this afterthought. It's like, nah, could have done that better. I guess I get what you were trying to do, but it doesn't work. But at least in terms of what the main characters go through, where they end up, what they do, this show feels pretty well thought out and put together. So yeah, I like that a lot. I like this show a lot. I think Kamen Rider W is definitely one of the best Kamen Rider shows. The Kamen Rider Axel movie, like I said, is also really fun. It focuses, of course, mainly on Ryu Teruri and him. It's basically him beating the ever-loving shit out of people for the entire movie, which is great. It's also a tad more violent than the series, but so is Fuuto PI. And yeah, our idiot cop Jino actually gets to do some cool Jackie Chan shit in the Axel movie, which was also nice. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's fun. Like, definitely watch, I would say, the first movie and Axel, and the other two, which feature another Kamen Rider Eternal, which only exists in these two movies, are okay, but they really are not necessary to watch. I mean, they're canon. There is some stuff happening in the first Eternal movie called A to Z or something like that, where the big center point of Fuuto, which is like this giant wind turbine on top of Fuuto Tower, breaks down, it gets destroyed and everything. And you see the aftermath of that in the episodes that are set after the movie. But aside from that, and the main bad guy also being part of the movie for a bit, it's not important. And the second Eternal movie is like a prequel to that, kinda, so it also doesn't really matter. Like, you can watch them, they're part of the main story, kinda, they're part of this universe, they're not alternate universe or something like that, but they're just side stories. So, yeah. I watched all of that to get to Fuuto PI.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't an ordeal, it was a good time. So, the question is now, aside from having a good time with these shows, was it worth it watching all of this again, and, the movies for the first time, to watch all of Fuuto PI? Is Fuuto PI a good show? So, Fuuto PI is based on a manga that started in 2017. So far, it counts 13 volumes and is still running. The manga, anyway. It is written by Riku Sanjo and illustrated by Masaki Sato. Now, Riku Sanjo's name might ring a bell for you, John, because he is also the writer of the Dragon Quest Adventure of Dai manga.
Yes, as soon as you said that, I was like, oh.
Yeah, the new anime adaptation of that wrapped up recently, so we might hear something about that in the Quick and the Dead next episode, because I think you liked it, John.
I did, but it's 100 episodes, and it's a lot to talk about.
So I guess not. Maybe just a quick word or something. But that you liked it is, I guess, an indication of that the story is good in itself.
Interesting that he went from Dragon Quest, where there's definitely some characters with influence with some Saint Seiya in there, to Kamen Rider.
Oh, that's not the half of it, dude.
But also, let's not forget Beat the Vandal Buster, because
exactly.
he wanted to make his own Dragon Quest.
Exactly, Beat the Vandal Buster. And he also wrote the screenplay for the old Guyver OAV and the two MD Geist OAVs.
What?
Wow, that is quite a wide portfolio in terms of tone difference and amount of blood and violence on display, let me tell you.
That I didn't realize. That's wild.
Yeah, it's super wild. It's like, okay, you definitely want to spread your wings. All right.
That's fair. That's cool.
Yeah, sure. Super. And I haven't watched MD Guys in a while. There's probably not much merit to it, except for it being a very 80s thing and being like the most hyper-violent, super gory bullshit. I know I enjoyed it when I was an edgy kid, but, these days, I don't know, probably not. But, yeah, this is a good-looking OAV. But, hey, still hoping for that full adaptation of Guyver eventually. I love the old OAV, and I love the look of Guyver. I like the two live-action Guyver movies. So, hey, maybe after we get this, we also can have some more kind of tokusatsu, but also not because it's based on a manga, but also maybe still a bit and action here, adaption. That would be great. I love me some Guyver. So give Sanjo some more love, anime world, if you would. That would be great.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he did a great job here, and we'll get to that. But yeah, responsible for the animation. I wonder why he was specifically picked for adapting specifically or doing specifically a sequel to Kamen Rider W, because he wrote the manga. So was he a fan of the show? Could be whoever holds the Kamen Rider license, like Toei, I guess, did they wanted to do something with Double as an anniversary thing, maybe, and picked him? I don't know. It's just I haven't looked this up, so I don't know why specifically he is the one who wrote that manga. Maybe he's a Kamen Rider fan. I don't know. But yeah, I'm glad he did. Responsible for the animation of the adaptation of Fuuto PI is Studio Kai, which haven't really done any high-profile stuff in terms of animation production. They did a bit of Prince of Tennis, Skeleton Knight in Another World, Uma Musume, and a lot of in-between animation on things like My Hero Academia, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Chainsaw Man. So yeah, around the block, but not necessarily anything that I'd say lit the world on fire so far. So, thankfully, I'm glad to report that Fuuto PI looks mostly fucking great.
Hey, you love to see it.
Yes, exactly. The animation, especially in the first 3 episodes, is gorgeous. Very little CG aside from vehicles and Double riding his bike in environments, which means a lot of great traditional animation plus nice swerving camera movement, which is really a nice surprise since I expected them to do the suits and dopants entirely in CG because that would be the thing to do these days. But nope, which is really cool. Good looking stuff. The transformation made me fucking cheer because it looks so good. They do it the first time. It's like, holy shit, the first time they transform into a Cyclone Joker Double, and then when Excel transformed the first time, that's a really good looking transformation sequence there. So, and in general, the fighting sequences are great, like great effects work. Like I said, great camera swerves and everything. The first 3 episodes look great. And the animation, the fight scenes for case 2 and 3 is not quite as good as in case 1, but it's still solid. And then in the 4th case, it's going wild again. So overall, this is a great looking show. And, you know, when I reviewed Bastard, I also said, like, hey, the middle part of the show is super, like, pretty damn weak. Fuuto PI never drops to that kind of level, not even remotely.
Nice.
And Bastard never reached the levels that the first 3 and that the first case and last case of this show reached. So it's a really good looking show. And considering that Studio Kai didn't really do that much high profile stuff before, I'm surprised that the show came out as good as it did. It's a really good looking show. And for a franchise that is, for all intents and purposes, like this is the first, if I'm not mistaken, animated Kamen Rider thing ever, which I was looking forward to forever. I was like, holy shit, this is such a fun franchise. Give me an anime of that. I would love to see it.
It seems like the natural progression.
Absolutely. You know, or do a spin-off. Be like, hey, okay, we got some Kamen Rider series that only exist in animated form, and we get some that only exist in tokusatsu form. Whatever, do something with that shit, right? I mean, we got a version of that for Gridman now. So maybe that's what kicked that off. Maybe that was like, oh, wait a minute. They turned Gridman into an anime. We have a popular tokusatsu franchise. Maybe we should do something anime with that too. Who fucking knows? But yeah, I mean, it's a manga adaptation, so that came before that. But yeah, it's super cool, and it's one of my favorite Kamen Rider shows ever. So how could I not look forward to this? And then it also turns out to be great, very well animated. So nice. Holy shit, I was not expecting this. I was super happy to see that. Right in the first episode, there's a nice reference to Shotaro Ishinomori, one of the creators, you know, of the original Kamen Rider, and it's on a shipping crate in the background of the first episode. It's like, hey, Ishinomori Company, I get it. And, you know, they know their roots, so good stuff. And yeah, there's a lot of new wrinkles to this. Of course, the main bad guys were disposed of, so we have to get new villains. And we get like this mysterious shadow town, shadow version of Fuuto that can be accessed to portals. And with that comes a new main character, Tokime, who is a woman that seems to be kind of connected to this weird upside-down version of Fuuto, which I call Shadow Fuuto in the show. I don't know if that is actually the Japanese term. Maybe it was Mirror Fuuto or something like that. I'm not sure. But yeah, she is like this new enigmatic character where it's like, oh, okay, how's she connected to this? Is she a dopant? She has a Gaia memory with her, but doesn't she seem to be able to use it? Whatever. Where did that come from? And then we have this new group of villains and new kind of very powerful dopants called high dopes. I love these names. Anyway, so these are
hitting the nail right on the head.
Yes. And yeah, these are people that have been apparently able to use Gaia memories for a long time and thus have gained the ability to use certain dopant abilities without having to transform first. So that's super dangerous. And yeah, it's super cool. And all of that is connected to our main characters for one reason or another, because they run into Tokime and then she becomes part of the detective agency and actually is trying to help Shotaro and Philip with the cases and everything. And of course, there have been some advancement. Like I said, Akiko and Ryu are married, so they hang around each other a lot. And all of the characters are in the show, which is, of course, also great. Like, even the weird side characters are in the show, get featured with cameos and stuff like that. So it's like, it was like seeing all these familiar faces again, now in animated form. It's like, holy shit, this is everything I wanted. You're not forgetting your roots, you're not forgetting where you came from, and you put it all in here. That's fantastic.
I'm curious, did they tie it together by having the original cast reprise their roles?
That's the only downside. They did not. The only one they got back is the narrator, which I forgot to look up his name again. You know who I'm talking about, the guy who also does the Golden Kamuy narration. I told you the other day who that was. They got him to do the voice samples again. I assume maybe they
could have also been like a old B-roll, you know? Maybe.
I don't know if they re-recorded it or if they just used the database stuff. Who knows? But he is in there. Everyone else got a new voice, which is a shame. I would have liked for all the actors to come back, and I think they actually got none of them. Like, not even one. Well, I would have expected to at least one of those not being big enough movie stars at this point that they are beyond that. But also maybe that's a contract thing. Maybe the rights are different now, or their talent agencies don't want them to star in anime or whatever. I don't know. I don't know what they're doing right now. If maybe some of them aren't even acting anymore. So yeah, but no, they didn't get any of the main cast back, which was a shame. But the new cast is doing a good job. They're seasoned anime actors. In there, I definitely recognize a lot of those voices. So it's not like it's a big problem. But yeah, you're right. It would have been great if they got the original cast back. And, you know, if I hadn't rewatched Kamen Rider W, that probably wouldn't have even sprung out at me. But like this, because I went from finishing up that show directly into Fuuto PI, it was super evident. It was like, oh, these are not the same voices. But yeah, you know, it's a small wrinkle. It's like, okay, it would have been nice, but also it's not a deal breaker.
Well, at least that's good then.
Yes, everything else, they are super dedicated to the fan service and bringing you all the stuff that you know from the old show. They even use the same on the last episode of this show clue board they use in Double all the time at the beginning of an episode. Last time on Kamen Rider Double, last time on Fuuto PI, and then you see like, hey, here are all the characters that started in the previous episode, and these are how they are connected, and maybe that guy is the murderer and whatever, right? With the lines in between and everything. So, yeah, they do that in this show too, and it's great. The OP rocks, and the dancing ED is great too. I sent those to you the other day, I think.
Yeah, and I forgot to watch them, but I'll do that later.
Yeah, it's really cool stuff. And yeah, the anime is much darker and explicit than the live action show. Like I said, the live action show seemed like it was geared towards kids mostly. And there was very few drops of blood in there, maybe some blood on characters' faces occasionally when they fought or something, but there was never any real wounds or anything shown or anything worse. The anime starts with a fucking dopant that is a goddamn cannibal. Yes, it's like severed body parts. It's like, what the fuck? This escalated quickly.
Oh no.
Yes, so it's definitely, I mean, the Kamen Rider X movie was already a bit darker and more violent, and went for an older age group, I would say, but this is going even further than that, which I didn't mind. I was like, okay, I mean, the show progressed, the characters progressed, so that stuff can progress too. It can become more darker, it can become more sinister. And it's also a bit more bouncy. Yes. The female characters in this show are very bouncy. Especially Tokime. And some other characters. Like there is an idol character in there too, which great concert scene. Also super well animated. Johnny would get a kick out of this. No CG in that either. It's really good stuff. So she is also like it's definitely has a bit more of a edgy feel to it in certain parts. It's like, oh, okay, all right. Which also was not present in the old show at all. Like there was no sexualization going on whatsoever. Not so much in this show. There's definitely some male gaze shots there. Can't deny that. But I also didn't mind. It was like, okay, I guess this is the more raunchy, grown-up version of Kamen Rider W. I can totally deal with that. It's super fun. It's not too lingering. It's not too over the top. There's some slightly nude body shots and stuff like that, but nothing full frontal or anything. And that's totally fine. It's a really nice mix-up of the old formula when it comes to that. So it definitely feels like, oh, this is the same universe, but it's a slightly different vision from a writer / artist that is more, I don't know, more fond of a bit more edgy stuff, I guess. So, yeah, it's more violent, it's a bit more sexy, so it's a bit more maybe noir or trashy noir, but it's fun. Like, yeah, I enjoyed that a lot. And we have nice character dynamics, or nice change up of character dynamics in this as well, because Tokime gets thrown into the mix, and she and Philip butt heads initially. And it's funny. At the beginning, I was like, oh, they're introducing Tokime to the double universe because Akiko is married now. So they need a new beard for Shotaro and Philip not to be the obvious gayest Kamen Rider protagonists ever. But then when Philip and Tokime butt heads, Akiko is like, dude, you just jealous. And Philip is like, that's ridiculous. Shotaro and I are both men. Which sparks like this bristling Fujoshi stare in Akiko's eyes. And she replies, well, those feelings can blossom between guys more often than you think. And I was like, wow, they're actually addressing the giant transforming elephant in the room. But then Philip, without skipping so much as a beat, actually goes to Tokime and is like, yep, I guess that's it. Makes sense. I was jealous because you as a woman could get close to Shotaro so quickly. I researched it. Romance between men is possible. Hey, Shotaro, bet you didn't know that.
What?
And even she is, wow, not many guys would just come out and say that. So that was fucking hilarious. And all the shippers from back in the day probably felt intensely validated by that. So, good on them. I loved it. I thought that was fucking great. And yeah, while each case takes up 2 episodes in double, it's 3 in Fuuto PI, so we got 4 cases, like I mentioned before. But they are equally straightforward. Like, the red herrings are incredibly obvious, so don't expect your puzzle-loving brains to get any reason to flex. The exception maybe being the 3rd case, which is a classic murder mystery in a big mansion with multiple suspects. So my favorite case by default. And in terms of surprises and where it's going and everything, that probably also was the most interesting one. It doesn't have that much relation to the main plot, but it's still the best set of episodes, even though the animation is not the best in those. But story-wise, yeah, definitely, I like the 3rd case the most. I loved Fuuto PI. I don't know what else to say about this. I hope we get a 2nd season. It started late in summer season, and I haven't really seen anyone talk about it or even mention it on social media. So I hope it did well enough to warrant a continuation. Especially since the new story is not even remotely finished and the manga is still running, so we probably have a lot of material left to cover. Like, we have disposed of one of the lieutenants of the new bad guy faction, and there are like at least three left. So there's a lot of shit that still needs to be done. And yeah, I can't wait. I hope this is happening because I love this, especially after rewatching Double, which was definitely even more worth it than just doing it for the sake of it. But it's just like, it flows so well into Fuuto PI, and it's like, hey, meeting all these characters again and then seeing a new story for these characters was great. Like, I couldn't have hoped for... This is what I hoped Spring would be in terms of, hey, revisiting this universe and everything. But Fuuto PI did it so good, and it gave me everything that I wanted from this, and stuff that I didn't know I wanted, like the stuff with Philip and Shotaro and Tokyo, and be like, I understand now. I just I wanna romance Shotaro. I understand. I get. It's so funny how giddy he is about that, because hey, it's a new thing that he researches. Like, Shotaro, you didn't know that, right? Man can become romantically involved. I did not know about this. This is fantastic. It's like, what? Holy shit show, this is amazing.
Good news, everyone.
Good news. Have you heard the good news? Amazing. So this show was a shitload of fun. All the characters that were in the old show are in this one. The animation is great. The presentation in general is great. The music is fantastic. Everything is good in this. And it's a really fun show. Again, straightforward, so it's not too complicated or anything. But good fights, good action in general. Some neat, detective cases and stuff like that. Cool side characters, new side characters, old side characters. It's all a good time, and God, I enjoyed the shit out of it. So I hope I'm gonna get more. We're gonna get more. If you want to watch it, it's streaming on Crunchyroll. As for Kamen Rider W, which you don't have to watch, but might want to check out before watching Fuuto PI. Things are not as easy, maybe. It might be on Tubi TV, the Roku channel, or Tokusatsu, but I'm not sure. So you might have to do some detective work on your own if you want to watch it and don't want to sail the seven seas, if you catch my drift. But yeah, I think Fuuto PI works as a standalone thing well enough. It looks mostly great, sounds great, the cases are fun, the characters get introduced properly, and future seasons might have some more flashbacks to Double that will fill you in on necessary story details from that show if you don't want to watch Double itself. You would definitely get more out of it if you watch what came before it, but like I said at the beginning of this review, that's a lot. So if you have the time and you maybe always wanted to dip your toe into tokusatsu stuff, I think Kamen Rider Double and Fuuto PI are some of the best entry points to that particular medium you can find out there. I had a thoroughly enjoyable time with all of it. Maybe you will too. Until then, henshin a bye-bye. And that is a wrap on the 136th episode of Anime Brain Freeze. All the music in this show is from the Double Dragon Neon soundtrack by the amazing Jake Kaufman. Please go to virt.bandcamp.com and check out his awesome work. Our show is available on most of the popular podcast services, but it's always worth visiting animebrainfreeze.com for our review index and more. Leave us comments and questions on YouTube, follow us on Twitter at AnyBrainFreeze, or send an email to animebrainfreeze@gmail.com. We would love to read your feedback. Thanks for tuning in, we hope you had a good time, and please join us again on our next episode. Macht's gut!
Take care, everybody. Next time on Anime Brain Freeze.
The devil has arrived from another realm
To save our world and take your order?